Hello students, today we will move ahead with the objective epidemiology of infectious diseases. Fine. In this we will see sources and reservoirs of infection, second modes of transmission of infection, third disease prevention and control measures. Now in this lecture we will see sources and reservoirs of infection. Fine. Let's start. Sources and reservoirs. First, let me tell you that infectious disease epidemiology, it's a fundamental part of whole of epidemiology. In fact, the subject of epidemiology originally developed from the study of epidemics of infectious diseases. Okay. Now, the study of communicable disease stimulated by changes in the pattern of communicable disease or the discovery of new infections or by the possibility that some chronic disease have an infective origin. The development of vaccines and antibiotics was not followed as predicted by the virtual disappearance of infectious disease. Fine, its prevention and control needs epidemiological knowledge and experience. So, now let's start with the sources and reservoirs. The reservoir of an infectious agent is the habitat in which the agent normally lives, grows, and multiplies. The starting point of the occurrence of a communicable disease is the existence of a reservoir or the source of infection. Understood? Now it is defined as the person, animal, object, or substance from which an infectious agent passes or is disseminated to the host, means immediate source. Understood? This is the source of infection. Now reservoir. It is defined as any person, animal, arthropod, plant, soil or substance or a combination of these in which an infectious agent normally lives and multiplies, on which it depends primarily for survival and where it reproduces itself in such a manner that it can be transmitted to a susceptible host. Fine. Simply, it's the natural habitat of the infectious agent in which it metabolizes and replicates. Understood? See, here you can see infectious agent. How diseases can spread through contact, droplet, airborne. Here you can see in contact, it is direct contact through hands, injections. Or indirect contact is like equipment or any environmental factors. In airborne, it is droplet nuclei if they are present in air. Fine. Now source versus reservoir. Now what's two different terminologies? The terms reservoir and source are not always synonyms. Okay. For example, in hookworm infection, the reservoir is man, but the source of infection is the soil, which is contaminated with infective larvae. Understood now what's the difference between the two terminologies, source and reservoir? Okay. Now in tetanus, the reservoir and source are the same, that is soil. In typhoid fever, the reservoir of infection may be a case or a carrier, but the source of infection may be feces or urine of patient or contaminated food, milk or water. Fine. Thus, The term source refers to the immediate source of infection and may or may not be a part of the reservoir. Fine. Now, what are types of reservoirs? Three types: human reservoir, animal reservoir, and reservoir in non-living things. Let's understand human reservoir. Most important source or reservoir of infection for humans is the man himself. He may be a case or a carrier. What is a case? It is defined as a person in the population or study group identified as having the particular disease, health disorder, or condition under investigation. Fine. In epidemiological terminology, the term primary case refers to the first case of a communicable disease introduced into the population unit being studied. Fine. This is the primary thing. Secondary, those which are developed from contact with primary case. A suspect case is an individual who has all of the signs and symptoms of a disease or condition, yet they have not been diagnosed as having the disease or had the cause of the symptoms connected to the suspected pathogen. Fine. Whatever it may be, now the gradient of infection, all infected person, whether clinical or subclinical, are potential source of infection because the disease agent is living in the body through frequent stools, vomiting, coughing, sneezing, or other means and is potentially available for transfer to a new host so that it can infect the new host also. B. Carriers. Case we understood, what are carriers? In some diseases, either due to inadequate treatment or immune response, the disease agent is not completely eliminated. It is still in the body. It is a carrier state. A carrier is defined as an infected person or animal that harbors a specific infectious agent in the absence of a clinical disease and serves as a potential source of infection for others. Understood? Means the person, the patient himself is the carrier. His infection is not completely eliminated. He can transfer his infection to some other person also. Okay? As rule, carriers are less infectious than cases, but epidemiologically they are more dangerous than cases. As I told, they can transfer their infection to other people also. Now, why they are dangerous? Because they escape recognition and continuing as they do to live a normal life. What happens? Now, some XYZ patient is in a carrier state. He has some XYZ infection. Okay? He is treated for the infection. He is now living a very normal life. But still, as I told, that it is not completely eliminated, so the infection is still present in his body and he is not at all aware of that, and that infection can be transferred to other person or other individual. Okay? They readily infect the susceptible individuals over a wider area and longer period of time under favorable conditions for the infection. Okay? Now, carriers may be classified as type, duration, and portal of exist. Now, in type, it is incubatory, convalescent, or healthy. Incubatory carriers are those who shed the infectious agent during the incubation period of disease. That is, they are capable of infecting others before the onset of illness. This usually occurs during the last few days of the incubation period. For example, measles, mumps, polio, pertussis, influenza, diphtheria, and hepatitis B. What is convalescent? Those who continue to shed the disease agent during the period of convalescence. Example, typhoid fever, dysentery, cholera, diphtheria, and whooping cough. Now, healthy carriers, they emerge from subclinical cases. They are victims of subclinical infection who have developed carrier state without suffering from overt disease, but are nevertheless shedding the disease agent. Example, poliomyelitis, cholera, meningococcal meningitis, salmonellosis, and diphtheria. Fine. Duration, temporary or chronic. Temporary carriers are those who shed the infection agent for short period of time. Okay. Chronic. A chronic carrier is one who excretes the infectious agent for indefinite period. Chronic carrier state occurs in a number of diseases. Example, typhoid fever, hepatitis B, dysentery, cerebrospinal meningitis, malaria, gonorrhea, etc. These carriers are far more important source of infection than cases. Okay. Third, portal of exit. What are the exit portals? It is urinary, intestinal, respiratory, and some others. Okay. Now let's understand animal reservoir. The source of infection may sometimes be animals and birds. These, like the human sources of infection, may be cases or carriers. Okay. The diseases and infections which are transmissible to man from vertebrates are called zoonoses. There are over 100 zoonotic diseases which may be conveyed to man from animals and birds. The best examples are rabies, yellow fever, influenza. Now, the role of pigs and ducks in the spread of epidemic and pandemic influenza, both as reservoirs, carriers, and amplifying host, is now well established. Yeah, you all know this. Okay. The migrations and movements of animals and birds may carry serious epizootiological and epidemiological risks. Okay, they can carry their infection from some other geographical condition to some other place, and they can easily transmit infection. Okay, there is evidence that genetic recombination between animal and human viruses might produce new strains of viruses. Example, influenza virus. Other example, which right now we are facing the pandemic. Okay, understood. Reservoir in non-living things. Soil and inanimate matter can also act as reservoir of infection. Fine. For example, the soil may harbor agents that cause tetanus, anthrax, mycetoma. Okay, understood? These are the sources of infections. Fine. Now in the next lecture, we will understand in the next lecture we will understand the modes of transmission. Okay, thank you.